Well, I'll say this for the Acolyte episode 5, it's certainly not dull. A big old Smilo Ren reveal, which we'd already guessed. Some surprise character deaths, though we barely knew them. An Asian man accidentally taking the wrong twin home because they're both black and he can't tell the difference. And lightsabers. Lots and lots of lightsabers. Blue lightsabers, yellow lightsabers, red lightsabers, dual-wielded lightsabers, broken lightsabers, lightsabers you can headbutt. All those people who complain that Andor isn't Star Wars because there's not enough lasers and lightsabers and adventure, well, I hope you're all loving this, because there's a whole ton of all of that in The Acolyte. Shame none of it's very good. At the time of writing, no more meta cringe has thus far been added to the tale of The Acolyte. Amanda Stenberg has not yet turned her discourse diss track into a complete album, so anybody hoping to learn how exactly a Danish girl should have deduced that 400 years of white oppression forces black Americans to have drug problems will have to wait a little while longer. My own diss track demanding reparations for the slavery and oppression inflicted upon my ancestors by her Danish forebears is still in production. I haven't quite mastered the twerking yet, because I'm still suffering from a bad case of self-respect. The only arguable meta-cringe entry is Leslie Headland being very disappointed in the internet for branding episode 3's coven lesbian space witches. Women who stroke each other's faces and manipulate the Force to create babies in a show billed as the gayest Star Wars ever? I can't think where we got that impression. Sounds like a lot of fake news nonsense to me. And speaking of fake news, that is, not magical lesbians, a quick word from this week's sponsor.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Are you concerned about fake news? Are you concerned that major news organizations have disgraced the purpose for which they were called into this world to begin with by lapsing into petty politics and ideological posturing that has a polarizing effect on your fellow citizens and subjects? If so, you should consider Ground News. Ground News is an aggregation service designed not only to present you with the world's top stories, and some less reported ones as well, but also to give you context. Where does the story come from? Who's reporting it? What's their record? Here, for instance, is a story about the very depressing CNN senior citizen shouting match that for some reason we still insist on calling a debate. With Ground News, you can instantly see who's reporting the story. You can see their bias distribution, you can get data on the ownership of these various publications, and so on. I used to be a journalist. I have a pretty low opinion of my former profession, but I firmly believe that the best check on yourself as well as on others is to read as widely as possible from as many viewpoints as possible. And Ground News makes that wonderfully easy by allowing you to instantly compare headlines and the framing chosen by each publication. Especially useful is the blind spot category that hosts stories one part of the political spectrum is ignoring. And this may well be your side, which is why it's such a good feature. If, like me, you are addicted to the apocalypse and so you read a lot of news, then Ground News is for you. Once again, if you sign up through my link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use to get unlimited access to all of its features. You can scan the QR code or head to ground.news/Little Platoon and sign up today.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
Our obligatory recap segment shouldn't take too long because episode 4 achieved almost exactly nothing. Hell, my last video clocked in at under 90 minutes. It's positively shameful. That's the long man YouTuber's equivalent of erectile dysfunction. But that's because I only had this to work with. Jedi Master Green Bean called Jedi Master Squid Game, Padawan Jackie, Yord VPN, and series protagonist Occupational Safety and Health Administration back to Coruscant for a very important meeting. Frustrating Master Squid Game because he wanted to go and save the Wookiee Kilnaka from evil twin Fanny May. The meeting, which could have been an email, ended with Jedi Master Green Bean sending Squid Game and co. off to rescue the Wookiee Kilnaka, because as everybody knows, women only do the right thing if they come up with it themselves after several hours of pointless yapping. Fanny May and mysteriously unarrested murder accomplice Timu Ezra, meanwhile, got half a galaxy's head start. They landed on the forest world of Kofar on the outer rim while everybody else was busy breaking Canon to force Ki Adimundi into a scene. Having trekked for many, many miles into the heart of the jungle, Fanny May decided that she was bored of her mission after all, so she betrayed Timu Ezra. She didn't kill him though, because if she tried to do that, then the rest of the show couldn't happen. She decided she'd rather just hand herself into the Jedi because Occupational Safety and Health Administration being alive is more important to her than making Jedi Masters unalive. This despite the fact that when they were last together, she tried to burn Occupational Safety and Health Administration alive because she wanted to join the Jedi for some reason. By pure contrivance, a big group of Jedi, including the ones who have names, which makes them marginally more like characters than the ones who don't have names, because that's how writing works, arrived at Kilnacker's house at more or less the same time as Fanny May, even though they had to get from Coruscant to the Outer Rim and then follow a beaver into the woods. Stop complaining, you bigot. This is Star Wars now, and all 6 of the new fans really love it. They shouted at Fanny May in lieu of bursting into the house and accidentally killing her, thereby proving themselves to be terrible policemen, and this means that Smilo Ren had the time to float into the scene and force push everybody into a thrilling cliffhanger. We are all supposed to be waiting on bated breath to discover the face beneath the Darth Punk helmet. Sure, the last time a Disney Star Wars show pulled this trick, everybody was waiting to see who the hell Marok was in the Ahsoka show, and he ended up just being a fart. But I'm sure this time they'll get it right, when it inevitably turns out to be Timu Ezra, because that's probably the worst of all the available options. It'll still be more satisfying than a fart, even that big one you finally let out when you got back from that funeral last week. This pretty much brings us up to date. The last thing to note at this stage is that any part of this video that looks better than merely competent has probably been done by my editor, who now has his very own channel. He'll be doing weird and wonderful things over there from time to time, probably involving gay Italian Europop references or something. And I'm sure he'd appreciate the support if you fancied hitting that subscribe button over there. Now I've been nice to him, hit the fucking title slate, you piece of shit. The Acolyte Episode 5 is really one big old fight scene, lest you be wondering how a single Smilo Ren could drag out a fight over an entire episode having already been shown force pushing a group of Jedi harder than a Twitch streamer pushes his lurid fantasies on his underage fans. It's a joke, I'm pretending I'm current. Well, wonder no more. Old Smilo is just gonna forget how powerful he is for large parts of the episode, and everybody else is going to make some very peculiar strategic decisions, and important characters are going to disappear for long stretches of the battle without any cause or explanation. And when you combine all of these completely invalid reasons, yeah, you can contrive yourself 25 minutes of a fight scene for the 3rd time in 4 episodes. Episode 3 doesn't count because, like Kiadi Mundi, it doesn't take place in this time period. Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up dazed and confused and immediately looks for her pocket droid, Pip. This is the first and by far the least significant instance of undercooked character work that will come back to bite the show later. Unlike most droids in Star Wars, even in Disney Star Wars, which otherwise knows how to play on sentimentality around droids, Pip hasn't really been established as an entity, because it otherwise spends its time off-screen and in Occupational Safety and Health Administration's pocket, except where she has a direct use for it. Pip hasn't had any chance to develop or show a personality. No, pissing on beavers doesn't count. It might get you to the front of a pride parade, but it isn't a character trait. Pip has no agency, so he has no chance to show off his quirks and behavior, which is why nobody really gives a shit about him. Sorry, Pip. And this kicks off a trend in this episode because the Acolyte really needs us to have developed some attachment to Pip in order that a later decision registers. When R2 comes to the rescue in Empire Strikes Back or gets shot in Return of the Jedi, you feel something for him because R2 is a character with agency whose decisions are driven by implied motives and values. It's a bit like watching a dog coming to rescue its owner from some dire situation. You're invested in the dog's story because the dog has prototypical character with traits like loyalty, and its decisions are born of admirable motives. By contrast, if you throw your phone at a bad person in a cape, you might register a sense of inconvenience. I mean, for fuck's sake, I just spent $1,000 on that iPhone because I measure my self-worth in Apple products. It's got all my contacts in it. Oh, fuck, I'm a Twitch streamer. It's full of lolly porn and horse dick. Oh, shit. But that's kind of it, really, as far as your emotional investment goes. Your iPhone didn't make any decisions. It doesn't have an opinion on the matter. It's not rescuing you by some act of its own volition. There's no bravery involved. No, you've just thrown it at a twat in a cape. Pardon me if I don't get all teary-eyed over your sacrifice. This is, as I say, going to recur in much bigger and more significant ways later, but I mention it now because I'm quite sure the writers want it to be otherwise. There's a reason we keep seeing Occupational Safety and Health Administration waking up in a panic and immediately reaching for Pip. It's supposed to convey attachment and affection in order that we understand how sad and or desperate it is that Occupational Safety and Health Administration would need to sacrifice Pip later. But, as with pretty much every other scene in this show, it handily demonstrates that these writers really don't understand how writing works. They needed a character, and they don't have one. Occupational Safety and Health Administration trips and falls into some red sand that has appeared from somewhere. I think it might be pollen from the pods Fanny May tripped over in the previous episode, but it doesn't matter because it won't come up again. She looks to one side and she finds herself face to face with a dead Jedi. I will say, continuing my vain attempt to give the show credit for things it does right, there are one or two competent visuals dotted around this episode. That jibe at Andor haters earlier was in part a setup for one of the themes running throughout this episode in particular. It does have a superficial Star Warsy aesthetic. Sometimes it stretches for entire scenes that persists so long as you don't pay any attention to what is actually happening. People with an incredibly low estimation of what Star Wars is or should be will find things to like about it, much as they would have found things to like about Ahsoka and about The Mandalorian. But the reason much of the early praise for those shows has already faded to silence, while Andor has been a slow burn but gained popularity over time, is that these qualities are so superficial, and most people, even those who profess to have low standards, have higher standards than they themselves realize. As that old guy, the creepy one who was famous for some Star Wars stuff back in the day, as he used to say, you might not notice, but your brain did. Turns out there's a bit more to it than waving lightsabers around and choreographed set pieces, isn't there? This scene is one such example. You hear the noise of lightsabers clashing in the distance, but Occupational Safety and Health Administration is still catching up with events. Cutting to a dead Jedi is a fairly harsh and dramatically competent way of pre-establishing the tide this battle has taken. Your brain might be asking how it is that only one Jedi seems to be lying dead here, given the state of play established at the close of the previous episode. It might be asking why the battle should have moved who knows how far away into some trees without any further casualties on either side. It might again be asking how an enemy capable of summoning a force push of that magnitude should be taking this long to dispatch the remaining Jedi, and, given how easily they go down when we do join them, why he waited until the camera was on him to start inflicting fatalities. The show could have spun this out for suspense, rather than jumping straight into the action in a way that invites questions of time. For Occupational Safety and Health Administration to stumble upon a trail of bodies leading her toward the action, which we could then join in a much more personal and tightly contested affair consisting solely of the known characters, then you could maximize the horror, hint at Smilo's power level, build up tension in the unknown fate of those we really care about, those Occupational Safety and Health Administration should really care about, Squid Game, Jackie Stardust, and VPN. But since we're in the realm of shoulds, I also have to point out that we should have done a massive amount more to actually establish their characters and their relationships to give Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the audience a reason to fear for their safety, and we haven't done that at all. So that suggested fix just a moment ago isn't a quick and simple feat of camera work and scene construction. It does entail fixing the show's deeper problems first, none of which has been or will be done. So again, that point about superficiality. There's a basic from a distance, if you don't look too closely, aesthetic impressiveness about bits of the fight we are about to join, but absolutely nothing below the surface, a problem that bedevils the entire show in pretty much every one of its aspects, as we will see later with the big old totally not predictable at this point Smilo Ren reveal. And I do have to stress the from a distance and if you don't look too closely qualifiers, because really the scene construction does fall apart here under the slightest gaze. I mean, this is a pretty good illustration, isn't it? Fair enough if they were a long way away, if she'd had to walk around a corner or through some trees to meet the battle, but these guys are fighting right next to her and have been since she woke up. The only reason she's just noticed them now, despite them being in her field of view from the moment her eyes opened, is that the script says we had to look at the dead Jedi first. But if you were in that position, what would your eyes immediately be drawn to? A body off to the side, or the actual lightsaber battle taking place in the dark but right in front of you, making it even more visible? Hell, a condensed version of the alt scene I just laid out could have her stumbling forward, transfixed by the fight, to trip over the corpse that she hadn't seen, which would have the same effect of showing us how the fight is going before we join it. It's really, really easy to fix things like this because they are so very superficial. It's just basic visual storytelling. Then, of course, your brain begins to notice that most of these Jedi aren't swinging at anything at all. It's not as obvious as it's been in other multi-foe scenarios in Disney Star Wars, because at least our vision is partially obscured by the trees here, but most of these guys are waiting their turn in order that they can get taken out sequentially. They are flourishing their lightsabers to make the scene look busy, to give the impression of activity, but if they actually attacked in unison, they would win, and we can't be having that. Look at this. Look at it. We just saw a bunch of them converging. We cut away. Now we get one guy lunge at Smilo and get knocked back. Then we see VPN lunge at Smilo and he gets kicked back. And then we see what probably isn't Plo Koon, but it's the Acolyte, so who the fuck knows? He goes in and takes his turn to die. Rip, hopefully not Plo Koon. Then some rather, curious things occur. Smilo headbutts a lightsaber and survives. In fact, that's not all he does. Smilo deflects one lightsaber with his wrist armor, and then he headbutts another lightsaber, and this causes the lightsabers to switch off, which we get to see because Smilo obligingly gives VPN enough time to block his next strike, meaning we can cut away for a few seconds to see the two Jedi staring confusedly at their now extinguished sabers. Now there are, it must be said, quite a few examples in wider Star Wars media of materials that can resist lightsabers. Most recently is Beskar, of course, thanks to The Mandalorian. Before Beskar, we had an implied material in Revenge of the Sith, which is what allows the Magna Guards to incompetently flail at the Jedi with their staffs before being near instantly cut down because they needn't have bothered. I do love it when we take our enemies seriously. Before that, we had Cortosis, which I'm mostly familiar with from Jedi Outcast, because Outcast actually thought it was worth giving a story reason for late-game enemies having more hit points. I know, story justifying mechanics. What a strange old world it was. And I believe there is another material from various comics and probably a book or two called, Frick? No, not you little gremlin. The fact these materials do exist in canon, and by canon I mean legends, means of course that all the people who last week decided that Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday can be changed because it was only in legends, and that basically means it doesn't exist, well, they can this week tell us there's no problem with headbutting lightsabers because the material exists in legends. It should go without saying that I'm a little bit tired of pretending that people like this belong to my fucking species. Homo they might be, but they do not merit the title of sapiens. Given you're here watching this video, I'm going to assume that your ancestors fucked the smart Neanderthals, while Disney fans' ancestors got fucked by the Neandertards. So you might be interested in the whole canon discussion. We did a big old EFAP on it a week or so ago, and the link to that is in the description. The short form version of it is, Lucasfilm once operated a tiered system of canonicity, with the movies at the top, followed by the TV shows, then by wider expanded universe entries in games, comics, novels, and such, and then secondary canon materials, with each tier being superseded in the event of conflict by the tier above it. This doesn't mean the top tier canon and its stewards, George Lucas and co., completely disregarded everything below their domain. Lucas famously lifted bits and pieces from the EU into top-tier canon, like Coruscant itself, which was first named in one of the Timothy Zahn books, I believe. This was once brought together in the form of the Holocron, a singular continuity database kept by Lucasfilm. But that was all ditched when Disney took over because they wanted to be free to tell their own stories, and then to steal bits of older stories without credit once they realized their own stories weren't very good. The overarching problem with this approach is that you cannot year zero big universes, whether fictional or real, much to the frustration of vandals and socialists the world over. This is because plenty of people spent a very long time ensuring links of contingency and causality between their stories and the Lucas material that they were using as a springboard, and because the old canon tiers were permeable, contingency never flowed exclusively in one direction. If Lucas liked an EU idea, he found a way to include it in a movie or a show, and if he liked an idea that was contradicted in the Holocron database, he might well ditch that idea for something else, rather than overriding the continuity of a popular expanded universe work. This means, to go back to the Ki-Adi-Mundi example, that something as simple as changing a birth date listed in secondary canon can cause wider problems because higher tiers of canon took it as the presumptive truth. Combine the birth date and the traits of his species, they have a short lifespan, for example, meaning Mundi was one of the few Jedi given a license to bone, and then any story in which he features is undermined by the simple act of changing his date of birth, because his character is partially but importantly formed by that trait. Relegating the pre-Disney EU to Legends was, therefore, a revolutionary move. And like all revolutionary moves, it collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Much of the still canonical EU is contingent upon things that were relegated into Legends. Much of Legends occupies an in-between state of being both canonical and retconned at the same time because nobody has bothered working out which it's supposed to be. And material subsequently brought back from Legends into canon, as is happening with increasing frequency, are often untethered from other contingent material that remains retconned, meaning nobody really knows what's true, what's not, what's real, what isn't, what's operative, what's defunct, or how it's all supposed to tie together. That ambiguity then allows Neanderthal descendants who shill for Disney Star Wars properties to dismiss or elevate Legends material as expedience demands. If the Acolyte breaks Legends continuity, it doesn't matter because it's only Legends. If the Acolyte relies on Legends continuity, as in the case of whatever material Smilo's helmet turns out to be made from, then you can't complain about it because it's in Legends and Legends is really important stuff. This approach is otherwise known as cognitive dissonance. Now, I am not actually, impressions be damned, a stickler for canonicity in this particular case. I don't like it and I can choose to ignore it, but Disney does own the IP and it does have the right to do what it likes with continuity databases and such. Yes, it would be better had they done otherwise. Yes, it would be better were none of that true, but they haven't, and it is. What I am a stickler for, though, is basic good sense in storytelling. Let's say it's fine, for the sake of argument, to chuck the entire Star Wars canon on KK's bonfire while she dances madly around the flames in some sort of lesbian cult ritual. Okay, good for you, KK. But whoever's writing the next entry must then build something with the same care and attention to structure that you once gave the expanded universe, because rules of world building are universal constants. Ideas must be introduced and supported, not merely represented on screen when it's convenient. You cannot give a guy a helmet that extinguishes lightsabers and then say in the meta realm, I guess it's cortosis. You remember cortosis, don't you? It's from the EU stuff that you really liked. You know, the stuff that's burning over there on my bonfire. It's a bit like a defender of the MCU from Phase 4 onwards, defending a particular decision by reference to Marvel Comics. That doesn't work, you spanner. The MCU is a different universe from the comics. That was clearly established. You cannot now have recourse to something you clearly said was separate earlier. That is not how it works. And this brings us down to the particular problem with this scene in The Acolyte. I would be willing to bet that a substantial majority of old Star Wars fans have never before encountered Frick, except maybe in that terrible JJ film. And probably a substantial majority have never heard of cortosis either. This is functionally the first time they consequentially appear in either a movie or a TV show, the top two tiers of the old canon, and for very sensible reasons. Using them now without any lead-in or as yet explanation is sloppy. I'd go so far as to say that using them at all is unwise, given super materials with the ability to block lightsabers a century or more before the prequels, never mind the OT, ask far too many questions that you really don't need to answer. But wait, if they're this good, why didn't the Empire use them for stormtrooper armor? Why didn't the Jedi use them up to and through the Clone Wars? It was once canonical that a container made of Frick survived the Death Star blast on Alderaan, for fuck's sake. This is very, very dumb, because you then can't help but notice all the many places it isn't used in the movies. It's less of an issue with a show or a movie set after the OT, because you've then got the easy out of technological advancement, but you'd still have to write in some form of explanation, which Jedi Outcast does in the case of cortosis. And yes, before anybody points this out in comments, if this does occur in the Clone Wars animated show, then I would say it's a problem with the Clone Wars animated show. I am not one of these people who thinks that everything Lucas and Filoni does is almost, if not as good as, if not even slightly better than sex. The problem with the Acolyte, though, is that here we've got nothing yet. Here we've so far got a guy able to headbutt lightsabers in a way Darth Vader never could. So we're just going to have to to assume that the Jedi, then the Republic, then the Empire just kind of forgot that this was a material they could procure. But if you are going to insist on using it in the Acolyte, I think we need a couple of beats in play to ground it. In the first place, seeing it in action earlier could have teased its presence and quite effectively. Let's say that Fanny May's little daggers are made of cortosis, for example. Instead of the very silly scene we got with Trinity getting distracted by saving a falling woman, Fanny chucks daggers at her, and Trini goes to... Who the fuck is Trini? That was close to being a bad word. And Trinity goes to casually deflect them with her lightsaber because she thinks this is just oh so easy. But oh snap, the first one causes the lightsaber to short, and the second one hits her in the heart, and she dies. Her overconfidence was her weakness. How very mysterious, too. This is the sort of thing the Jedi could and would, in this retelling, notice when they investigate her death. Her lightsaber seems to have shorted. Here's this mysterious dagger lodged in a wall that Fanny was in too much of a rush to pick up or something. Made of a very strange metal we've not encountered for a very long time. But there's a record in the archive of a substance called cortosis. It's incredibly rare, and it can cause lightsabers to short out. This beat would serve a function akin to the Kaminoan saber dart in Attack of the Clones, in giving us a partial clue to unravel a bit of the mystery behind the assassin's identity, but one that is insufficient on its own. Later then, when Kylo turns up and headbutts a lightsaber out of existence, which I'd still prefer he hadn't done, but whatever, we've then got some reason to know how this occurred, leading us then to the second place. A subsequent explanation from Kylo himself as to what it is and in particular how he got it. An explanation that places great emphasis on the scarcity of this material in order to avoid trespassing on events later in the timeline. None of this should be controversial. I am not saying you cannot have old Legends material brought back into canon. If anything, I'd prefer that more of it was still canon. All I'm doing is setting out a way to bring cortosis back into the canon. But we really do need to abide by the most basic rules of writing when we do so, set up and payoff in particular, in order to justify it. Simply name-dropping or briefly utilizing a Legends material most people have never heard of without cause or explanation wouldn't be forgivable in any setting. To emphasize again that I do not consider George Lucas beyond reproach, I really don't like the Master Sifo Dyas beat in Attack of the Clones, because it's so important to understanding the basic mechanics of the movie, and yet the movie doesn't spend more than 5 seconds elaborating the point. A tiny share of the audience will know the context, because they've read the tie-in materials and the subsequent comics and the EU entries, but everybody else, and I must stress that everybody else is most people, won't have a fucking clue. They'll just park it as a thing that I guess happened to some guy that means something? I don't know. Hurry up and gimme Padme's Padmabs.
My Juba needs jizzing.
Away from the question of canon, I can't help but note that Smilo leaves himself pretty vulnerable while he's locked up with VPN, during which time the Jedi behind him could do all manner of things. The show's taken care to show us that they all know Kung Fu. We know the Jedi carry ranged weapons because VPN's been quite salty about Occupational Safety and Health Administration hanging onto the stun gun that Squid Game gave her. They have the Force, and we'll later see that there's another Jedi with a still functioning lightsaber standing behind the 2 Jedi whose lightsabers have deactivated. But instead they just kind of stand around waiting for the debuff to time out, which is all the time required for VPN to suffer a severe wound that he'll completely forget about in a couple of minutes' time. Oh no. When the lightsabers do turn back on, we are back to busy work. Look at Blue lightsaber here. What the fuck you swinging at, Blue? Could it be you're just flashing your lightsaber around to trick idiots on Twitter into saying this is the best choreography since the Kama Sutra? Smilo kills Yellow 1, then Blue gets herself stabbed, then Smilo uses the Force to pull Yellow 2 onto Blue 1, because I guess he's a fan of the old double penetration. I mean, we always knew these guys were cannon fodder because the writer, C.K. Keachel, told everybody on Twitter that the script referred to them as red shirts, and then she locked her account to avoid being a red shirt herself. I'm slightly perplexed as to why the ginger nut was obligingly standing behind everybody doing fuck all, just waiting his turn to die. Not the sort of lazy construction I'd expect from the best choreography of all time, but hey ho. You might think that a trained Jedi Knight would have some sort of defense against a rudimentary force pull maneuver, because if they don't, then it's another of those powers that's really super effective, but only ever used once, like that big old force push in the last episode. Now, there could be a reason, but I think that reason is probably just gonna be that it's the best choreography of all time. There are a couple of things as well worth keeping in mind here. Smilo has just made such short work of these Jedi Knights that you wonder how they even made it this long into the battle. Since Smilo has made such short work of these Jedi Knights, it's going to seem incongruous if he has more trouble fighting a single Padawan later. And speaking of Padawans later, where is Jackie in all of this? Where's Squid Game, more to the point? They were all standing together at the end of episode 4 and they all got force pushed in the same direction? Could it be that the best choreography of all time relies on keeping important characters off screen until it's ready to do something with them? That sounds lazy enough to fit nicely into the best choreography of all time. So I think that might be it. While all the proceeding has unfolded, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has just been standing gormlessly until the script is ready to do something with her, because it's the best choreography of all time. She still has her stun gun though, and she finally decides she'll use it. But oh no, it turns out that the question mark armor deflects stun guns as well. Oh, the Star Wars fandom wiki has decided the armor is definitely Cortosis, by the way, though it does say that Smilo is only wearing a Cortosis helmet and a Cortosis gauntlet, and I'm pretty sure that stunner hit him on the right shoulder. We know his right shoulder isn't made of Cortosis because we see it quite often unclothed. Smilo's guns are one of the few things in the show it's actually nice to look at. I was paying attention for purely technical reasons, of course, because it's the best choreography of all time. Osha, run! So Smilo leaves YordVPN alive because it's not time for him to die just yet, and plods off after Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Meanwhile, we find that Fanny May has been on pause since the end of the previous episode, and she's still peering out from inside Kilnacker's shack, this despite her telling us in the previous episode.
And if I don't do it, he'll kill me.
Which was then reinforced by...
He'll kill you.
He'd have to find me first, and I don't know if even he could make it all the way over here without a guide.
And this despite the episode 4 blurb telling us that she is a clever assassin, meaning you'd think that she'd have taken this opportunity to run away while Smilo was busy murdering the Jedi. Apparently standing there watching was a very strenuous activity, because when she finally does move, she seems to be suffering some sort of asthma attack. This is what passes for acting, I suppose. She has a quick look around, spots Kilnacker's lightsaber, and grabs it. A fine addition to her collection. Oh, except, well, you know, it would have been had she not left Trinity's lying on the floor after she killed her, and had she not so much as glanced as Tommen's after he killed himself in front of her. I kind of assumed there was some reason for her not picking those up, but I guess that's not true. Fine, whatever. Outside, Occupational Safety and Health Administration is running through the forest, and then she stops. Then, suddenly, Smilo! Oh no! I guess this means that YordVPN is just far too injured to have stood up and tried to stop him following her. Smilo lobs his lightsaber at her. Then, suddenly, Squid Game! Wait, where the fuck have you been all this time, Squid Game? Why were you all the way out here? Remind me to ask this question of Jackie when we see her too, by the way. But it's more pertinent with Squid Game because there are really only two possible explanations. Either he's been up to something nefarious, or the writers and the director are incompetent hacks who've just spawned him in for dramatic effect. Or both. The answer could be both. Still slightly odd that Squid Game managed to get all the way out here, having first abandoned his fellow Jedi to face Smilo, given they were all standing in a line together the last time we saw them, and him running off evidently wasn't hyper-suspicious to YordVPN. He never mentioned it, or Jackie, because she won't mention it either when she gets back from wherever the fuck she is at the moment. This episode is going to go on to make Squid Game a big old mystery box character, with plentiful hints that he is darker and more mysterious than he has presented himself as being. But then again, given he was just about to open up to Occupational Safety and Health Administration at the end of episode 4,
Once we get May safely to the ship, I'll explain everything.
before Smilo interrupted them. My money is still on this being past tense bad deeds that he hasn't had the courage to fess up to yet, rather than any more fanciful theory about him secretly being a Sith himself or whatever. So I guess we'll just have to wait and hope that maybe the next episode remembers that it had him teleport suspiciously far away from the scene for some reason. Because if it doesn't try to explain that, then yeah, this really is just contrived as hell, and oh fuck, look who it is! It's VPN. He's recovered, and he came from behind Squid Game. So does that mean Squid Game was actually not suspiciously far away? He was with everyone else, but sort of out of existence at the same time? Maybe he said, "You go take him, I'm right behind you." Like a fucking coward. Because for VPN to have come up right behind him, sporting that injury that a few seconds ago kept him off his feet, then that means that Occupational Safety and Health Administration must have gone in a circle, no? Glad to see VPN's feeling better anyway. Must have used Force Heal or something. Oh god, I hope that power never comes up in this show. Squid Game tells VPN to get Occupational Safety and Health Administration back to the ship, so they run off, leaving Squid Game to confront Smilo alone. Well, this should be cool. Basil. We've cut away to Basil. Fucking Basil is still here for some reason. In fact, Basil's going to be pottering about for the whole episode for no discernible reason. VPN decides they should follow Basil, but we'll find out shortly that Basil isn't even going back to the ship yet. So God knows what the plan here is. Or what Basil's plan is even. He is a little bit sus, is Basil. Wouldn't surprise me if he turned out to be the mastermind behind the whole Sith operation. Darth Basil.
We have to go back. You're injured.
Fine. Sol gave me an order. Osha, I don't want to have to subdue you, but I will.
Yeah, VPN playing the noble rapist there. Yes, the show has temporarily remembered that he is meant to be injured, but the emphasis here is on the word temporarily. He is about to run off looking distinctly uninjured, and his injury will never recur in any significant way for the rest of his life. This is also the first of 2 times Occupational Safety and Health Administration stops them and says, "We have to go back," even though she really has no reason to want to do that. And if she did have a reason to want to do that, she might have put up more of a fight earlier. It seems rather that she's caught a bad case of the Fanny May indecision virus, happily running for hours through the forest only to stop at improbable locations and change her mind, even though there's been no change in circumstances to prompt it now rather than at any time preceding. The second time she does it, there's more of a reason for her to want to, for maybe 3 seconds, which kind of makes me think that this first instance is just here as a kind of punctuating beat to vary up the rhythm of the episode, which makes these guys incompetent musicians as well as incompetent writers, because the rhythm of the episode has already been interrupted by Squid Game's face-off with Smilo.
Master Soul.
Who are you?
You don't remember me.
I sense something familiar.
Poor Squid Game. Poor Squid Game. You're gonna feel like such a twat when you learn who this really is. You had him in the palm of your hand, dead to rights, and you let him off with a caution. A guy called Manuel, who's apprehended but let off only to commit several murders. Yeah, that seems very 2024. But let's not make this political. Obviously, it's not spoiling anything at this stage to say that Timu Ezra is the man in the man in the cortosis mask, which means that yes, they literally arrested him 2 episodes ago, and he was an accomplice in the murder of 2 Jedi Masters, and they let him off with a fucking caution. Quite apart from the dramatic inertness of his reveal, which all the substantive work must now be done in the remaining 3 episodes, because none of it has been so far, it's this bit of the setup that really makes it just so very awful, because it's so unforgivably stupid of the Jedi to have let him off with a caution that it can only be a massive contrivance. And that's without even getting to the question of whether they could or should have been able to sense his presence. After all, Master Squid Game just told us that he sensed something familiar, even if he cannot sense Smilo's true identity. Which does put paid to one of the more common shill defenses of this episode of The Acolyte. The Jedi couldn't sense Palpatine and they were in the same room as him. No, you fucking irredeemably slow children. But Sheev hadn't been arrested for assisting in the murder of 2 Jedi Masters at that time, had he? And it's not that the Jedi sensed nothing, it's just that the dark side was clouding everything, making Creamy impossible to pin down. It's only by the time we hit Revenge of the Sith that they notice the dark side seems to surround the Chancellor specifically.
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. The dark side of the Force surrounds the Chancellor.
Yes, and if you'd started correlating these things a bit earlier, you might not have died, you bald fuck. In The Acolyte, they were in the same room as a guy they knew was assisting an assassin from whom they'd already extracted a confession.
Hold on.
We know you supplied May with the poison that killed Moss's children. We have your confession.
And not only did they not arrest him, they didn't even bother to read his fucking minds, which the show has repeatedly shown us they can do, and do, in way less justifiable situations. Once again, because if they'd done the sensible thing, the rest of the show just couldn't happen. It's not often that a single scene can contain so much destructive stupidity, but it really is beginning to look like it's the apothecary scene in episode 2, far more than the deeply cringe power of Lesbos chanting in episode 3 that might go down as the single worst scene in the entire season. Mind you, we've still got 3 episodes left. The only thing it nominally achieved is in letting the Jedi know that Fanny May was going to return to the apothecary late that night. But A, they'd already learned that this was the only apothecary in town, so it must have been the apothecary from which the poison came, so staking it out would already have been a sensible thing to do. And B, there was only one road out of the village, and only one very obvious spaceship parked outside the village, so Fanny May only had one very obvious way off the planet. You could have intercepted her there and contrived her escape in some other, less Hiroshimically destructive way. But oh boy, Squid Game versus Smilo, round 1.
You carry a Jedi weapon, but you are no Jedi.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Squid Game. Do you people not read history? What's the point in having a big old Jedi archive if you don't know that red lightsabers are dark side generally and Sith in particular? Look, even Wikipedia still refers to them as Sith lightsabers. The process required to turn them red is a dark side ritual. No, it's not a fucking Jedi weapon, you twat. The lengths this show will go to avoid anyone suggesting that Smilo is a Sith or even a dark side user generally are quite astonishing. Especially so since it's all going to be rendered completely pointless in a few minutes' time. This should also put paid to the idea that Squid Game is himself a dark side villain, by the way. I've seen that rumor put forward a few times. But here he is, alone with Smilo, where he has no reason to lie when he calls it a Jedi weapon. It's genuine stupidity, not a misdirect. Probably. And granted, these things are one and the same with the Acolyte, so it's basically impossible to tell the difference, but I'm pretty sure he's not a Sith. For some fucking reason, Fanny May is still pissing about in Kilnacker's shack. She really is just on pause while the camera isn't on her, isn't she? Why are you still here, Fanny? Is a sentence you might also hear if the NHS botches your bottom surgery. Where the fuck did you come from? Suddenly Jackie, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus Christ, where have you been? What have you been doing all of this time? Why is it that important characters just teleport in and out of existence in this episode? Did you also just hide in a bush while Paul Ginger and the Nuts got themselves DP'd by a mangy Sith? Guys, it cannot be the best choreography ever if people who should be there just disappear and reappear at convenient moments like they're experiments in quantum teleportation. If in Duel of the Fates, Qui-Gon randomly puffed out of existence for minutes at a time, then suddenly puffed into existence minutes later and smacked Darth Maul from behind with his giant Liam Neeson penis, then dumb shills wouldn't be calling the Acolyte the best thing since Duel of the Fates because Duel of the Fates would be dumb. Anyway, Fanny May is supposed to be a trained, highly skilled, clever assassin who has been training for 16 years to kill a Jedi without a weapon, while Jackie is a Padawan who can't be trusted to train with lightsabers in case she accidentally decapitates herself. So this should be a fairly one-sided fight, especially since Fanny May has already been shown holding her own against and ultimately beating powerful Jedi Master Trinity, but it isn't because Jackie is a named character, so she's a better fighter than several unnamed Jedi Knights combined. That's just how it works. Jackie's goal here is to arrest Fanny May, since Jackie hasn't really been keeping up with events at all. But in order to justify another long sub-Matrix kung fu fighting sequence, we are back to not using lightsabers unless we're prepared to kill, even though Yord is at this very moment using his as a fucking flashlight. I guess it's understandable. It's understandable that 5 episodes in, many of the show's earlier instances of stupidity are now piling up for a big payoff. A rule that is is only a rule for scenes where it's a rule, but otherwise not a rule in all the scenes where the rule isn't operative, isn't a rule. It's a contrivance. If Jackie pulled her lightsaber now, she would instantly have the upper hand and would find it far easier to subdue Fanny May, who she should be prepared to kill anyway, given she thinks Fanny May has killed Kilnaka, and the person she thinks is Fanny's master has just sliced his way through several Jedi. This is quite obviously a combat scenario, my dear. Arrest would be an optional bonus, but from Jackie's perspective, Fanny May should absolutely be presumed a hostile combatant until she surrenders. But again, if characters did sensible things, we'd be looking at a very different show. And that's not even the biggest problem with this beat. Oh no. Because you might recall that in the last episode, Fanny May had decided she wasn't going to bother with Smilo's test anymore. Instead, she was going to surrender herself to the Jedi.
What are you doing? What I'm going to do is surrender myself to Kilnaka, and then turn myself into the Jedi.
You might be thinking, but Platoon, if they think she killed Kilnaka, then that changes things. But no, it doesn't, you because she's already killed 2 Jedi Masters, and the last episode actually factored that into her explanation.
The Jedi will put you in prison.
Not after I tell them who I know.
This next list here is going to be added to before we are done here, but for now, let's briefly state all the many iterations of Fanny May. First iteration. She wants to become a witch, and she wants her sister to stay and become a witch as well. Second iteration. She tries to burn her sister alive because her sister doesn't want to become a witch, and this may or may not have killed all the other witches who she wanted to be a part of. Third iteration. She wants to take vengeance on 4 Jedi Masters whom she accuses of attacking unarmed innocents. Fourth iteration. She wants to kill at least one of them without a weapon because she made a deal with Smilo and the deal is more important than the vengeance that motivates her. Fifth iteration. She does kill a Jedi without a weapon because she persuades Tommen to kill himself, but this doesn't count for some reason. Sixth iteration. She doesn't want to kill a Jedi without a weapon because it's pointless because Jedi don't attack unarmed people.
Attacking a defenseless person goes against everything the Jedi stands for. How do you kill someone like that?
Except in the third iteration where she says they do exactly that.
Jedi do not attack the unarmed.
Yes, you do.
Seventh iteration. Neither the deal with Smilo nor the vengeance motive are important to her anymore because she's loyal to her sister.
I don't need to do this anymore. You were wrong. Osha being alive changes everything. My loyalty is to Osha, not your master.
What are you doing?
Even though in the first iteration she tried to kill her.
It's not up to you. You can't stop me. Yes, I can. How? I'll kill you.
Eighth iteration. Instead of killing the Jedi, she's going to turn herself into the Jedi because they won't arrest her if she tells them who she knows, even though she doesn't know who she knows because he wears a mask.
Even from you couldn't tell me who he is even if you wanted to.
Ninth iteration. When a Jedi comes to arrest her, she tries to kill her. For reasons, even though in the 8th iteration she was going to turn herself into them. So yeah, I think the upshot of all that is that Fanny May isn't really a character. Fanny May is a smorgasbord of discarded ideas for many characters, all of which are fighting with each other, several of which are killed off in each episode, only to somehow return later when the scene demands it. She's not a serious person, and her writers are not serious people either. This is what you do if you have no idea what you want to do with a character. Fucking stop it.
You're under arrest for the murder of Master Indara, the murder of Master Tobin, the murder of Master Kilnaka.
Jackie, all that effort. Jackie, hey, shut the fuck up. All that effort you're putting into speaking there should really be put into getting those cuffs on, don't you think? But anyway, if you are reeling off the charge sheet, wouldn't being an accomplice to a dark side user who's just killed a dozen Jedi be somewhere on that list? Wouldn't it supersede the Miranda rights even? Do they even have Miranda rights in Star Wars? You're a Jedi Padawan, not a fucking deputy. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Squid Game and Smilo are still going at it, which rather confirms that if Squid Game hadn't been mysteriously absent for the earlier fight, the Jedi would have fared better. They might even have won. I do hope we are going to get an explanation for that at some point. I'd even settle for a bad explanation, just any explanation that isn't that he teleports.
You trained May. Show your face.
And let you read my thoughts.
Magneto. Smilo Ren is Magneto now. That's the reveal. His helmet stops Professor X Squid Game from reading his thoughts. I don't remember that being a Cortosis perk in Legends, but I guess that doesn't matter now because it's only Legends. I can't help but stress again that if you'd read Timu Ezra's mind when you arrested him, you'd have forestalled this eventuality, and when Smilo does lose his helmet later, they make no attempt to read his mind anyway, making this whole fucking thing pointless. Honestly, the show would be orders of magnitude better if they hadn't run with this power. It breaks everything several times over. At no point is it ever used to gain information that couldn't have been had in some other, more satisfying way. In episode 1, Squid Game mindfucks a prisoner to learn about the escape pod on the prison ship that Occupational Safety and Health Administration should never have been on to begin with, but never mind. But you've already got other prisoners in custody, and you already know where the ship went down, so having Squid Game go there on a hunch, using less information, would have done more to establish his faith in and attachment to Occupational Safety and Health Administration, improving the scene and telling us more about their relationship. Then, in episode 2, Squid Game mindfucks Fanny May and learns that she's never seen her master's face, but you could have had her say that, which would have had the additional benefit of leveraging mistrust. We don't believe her, she must be lying. Joined the dark side, Fanny May has. Lies, deceit, creating mistrust to her ways now, etc. The mind-reading power is actually detracting from opportunities for character work, for fuck's sake. And if you don't ask the question by establishing mindfucking as a power, then you can't be accused of not answering the question when the Jedi refuse to use it even where they really obviously should. There is merit in the vague way it's deployed at the end of the OT, since it can be taken to be sui generis, born of Vader and Luke's particular connection, especially since the Emperor flat out tells us he hadn't sensed Luke going down to Endor.
I have felt him, my master.
Strange that I have not.
Making it a thing all Jedi can do to anyone at any point they like forces you to do stupid things like stealing Magneto's helmet and drawing a smiley face on it to explain why you can't just mindfuck your villain.
What master hides his face from his pupil?
You tell me.
Ooh, very mysterious. Such mystery. Squid Game has a dark secret, guys. We already know this. This is not a useful conversation. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Jackie and Fanny May are still fighting, and even though Fanny is now using her daggers, which definitely counts as being armed, Jackie still isn't using her lightsaber, because the Jedi don't attack unarmed opponents or fucking I don't care. Fanny May manages to slice Jackie's leg. Don't worry, that's not going to hinder her at all. She and VPN have a fast healing buff active in this episode, for now at least, but it does cause her to cry out.
Jackie is a Jedi. She can take care of herself. I need to get you to safety. That thing is too dangerous.
Hey, Yord VPN. Why have you got your lightsaber out, Yord? Don't you know that Jedi only draw their weapons when they're prepared to kill? Why are you using it as a glow stick, Yord? Why is Jackie using her fists against somebody armed with knives, Yord? Consistency, for fuck's sake, show. Anyway, we are building toward the second instance of the Pip problem mentioned earlier. This scene is a straightforward repeat of the earlier "we have to go back" moment.
Jackie is a Jedi. She can take care of herself.
We have to go back!
But it's there, I think, to try and show that Occupational Safety and Health Administration cares about Jackie in particular. Not enough to actually go back and save her, though. Oh no, it's not time for her to do that. But at the same time, we do need to tell the audience that Occupational Safety and Health Administration knows what Jackie's screams sound like, because we cut their sex scenes out of episode 2, am I right? Actually, we need to show her being concerned for a named character rather than generically saying, "we need to go back" again, because the show has done next to nothing to build a meaningful relationship with that named character, so it's rushing things at the last minute. It's why they suddenly developed a tell-all exposition bond in episode 4. A dramatic moment is approaching and the audience needs to care, so we need to show the characters caring too. And because this is the Acolyte, we have to do this without actually doing anything like character work. My fucking god, I am so bored of the Acolyte. Shall we go on a Gundam tangent? Yeah, I think now is the time. It's been several videos since the last Gundam tangent. It's time. It's Gundam tangent o'clock. The bit where we discourse tangentially on all things Gundam, because Gundams are good and so are tangents. I used to watch a lot of Gundam with a good old friend of mine. It was back in the days when I think it was Mega Video would let you watch something like 3 episodes in a row before it timed you out. So the nightly routine we had was 3 Gundam episodes, starting with the original, of course, then Soul Calibur 3, then 3 episodes of Gundam, then Call of Duty, then 3 episodes of Gundam, then Mario Kart, and so on. I recommend it as an introductory course to formulaic writing because, as is to be expected across several 40-plus episode seasons, there's a degree of repetition involved, and it's not always subtle. So, for example, let's say we have an ancillary character. Her name is Mirai, and she needs to have a bit of an arc. Well, how about we throw some new guy into the mix? Sleggar Law joins the team. Sleggar Law is what Japanese people in the 1970s considered to be a hunk in the West, I think. Blonde, chin that doubles as a bottle opener, womanizer, etc. We don't have much time for this arc. Sleggar's gonna have to die in just a few episodes' time, so we'll fast-track a sort of love interest between them. It's Japan in the 70s, slapping is involved, obviously.
Hey, I'm gonna go take a shower.
You've only got 5 minutes. The Zeons will be back in no time at all.
Yes, sir. Hey, you want to join me, Mirai?
Sadly, I'll have to miss out.
That's enough.
And we're doing this in order that his death counts as a personal tragedy that gives Mirai a reason to emote. Now, I say this isn't subtle, and in terms of function, it is certainly not. Old Gundam is quite easily memeable. If a random but honorable hunk shows up and starts getting it on with an ancillary female cast member in any subsequent Gundam show, you know he's going to be dead inside 10 episodes. But it's instructive because of how much character work you can cram into that space, and how little you really need to cram in to make it seem kind of worth it. So, in Gundam 079, Mirai's fiancé is a bit of a brute. He doesn't value her. He doesn't deserve her. And good old Sleggar is an honest sort who knows war leaves no time to fuck around. So Sleggar debuts as a flirt with all the women, but establishes himself as a decent chap by defending Mirai's honor against her fiancé. But it's also an almost selfless act, because Sleggar believes not only that Mirai deserves better than her dick of a fiancé, but that she deserves better than him too. So when she falls for him and tries to take things further, he gently rejects her, with the sentiment essentially being, you are the most wonderful person I could meet, but you deserve someone more wonderful than I am. The platonic turn and the high esteem in which he holds her is embodied in a ring that Sleggar's mother gave him when he was younger, which he in turn hands over to Mirai before sorting out for what transpires to be his final mission. None of this is remarkable, and because it establishes a repeated theme, suddenly hunk, suddenly dead, it's quite funny in later instances. Gundam was killing off main characters decades before Game of Thrones started doing it. In Zeta Gundam, pretty much every named character dies in the end, and the protagonist ends up as a comatose vegetable because he was mind-fucked by a man with purple hair called Paptimus Scirocco, the man from Jupiter. This is my education, people. If you think I'm fairly good at this sort of thing, I learned so much from Gundam. Paptimus Scirocco is just amazing. Anyway, where was I? Sorry, I was just sort of standing Paptimus. Oh, that was it, yes. The Sleggar lore beat is effective enough, and it shows how efficiently you can establish basic interpersonal stakes between characters, even ancillary characters. Sleggar is alive for about 10 fairly short episodes, but he barely features in those, because this is really the sidest of all the side stories. But in what amounts to mere minutes of screen time, we form a relationship. We use that relationship to show values, we show values underpinning decisions, and then we mourn those values in death. It's basic stuff, it is just a few beats, but it ensures that a recurring ancillary character in Mirai has her moment in the spotlight, that we understand more about her, that she actually goes on a journey, that she is shown thinking things, feeling things, caring about things, so enabling us to give a shit about her. The Acolyte, by contrast, knows that it is about to kill off Jackie. Spoilers, by the way, she gets triple penetrated. Smilo's into some weird shit, alright? It's also dimly aware that she's only just started to form a character, and as of episode 4, that character hasn't really begun to form a relationship with anybody else. She exists in the main in potentia. There are interesting little hints of character emerging, and I've laid those out in previous videos, but none of them have flourished yet. They are barely even budding. Unfortunately, we have just 1 and a bit bit episodes left. So at some point between episode 2 and episode 4, the writing team decided that actually loads of character and relationship building stuff has actually been done after all. It's your fault you didn't notice it because it happened off screen. They expressed their closeness by just expositing at each other throughout episode 4, and now we know that Occupational Safety and Health Administration cares because for all of 2 seconds, she maybe almost contemplates going back to try and rescue Jackie before deciding that actually fuck Jackie after all. Never mind. Later, Jackie will die, and Occupational Safety and Health Administration will... we'll get to that. Back with Squid Game and Smilo, and Squid Game gets kicked away. I assume with the Force, because otherwise Smilo's got some killer quads as well as those lovely guns to boast about. Squid Game gets to do a nice little pose here, which I quite like as far as individual shots go, but when the camera flips behind him and pans up, we find that Smilo has pulled a Batman and disappeared, even though Squid Game was pretty much looking at him the whole time, so fuck knows how he lost him. But at least the show has given us a reason to keep Squid Game out of the next scene, kind of, that doesn't rely on him disappearing into the quantum realm again. Over with Occupational Safety and Health Administration, we find VPN has got locked in some sort of video game stance with that lightsaber of his. Hey, remember when Jedi only did that when they were prepared to kill? No? Nobody remembers that? Fair enough.
What is he?
I don't know. He doesn't follow the rules of combat, and there's no method to his movements. It doesn't make sense. He gets into your head, and he stays there.
My mother could do that. Get inside a Jedi's head. I saw it once.
Okay, but here's the thing, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. We know your mother could do that. We saw it once too. Here's what it looked like. But that doesn't look anything like what we've seen Smilo doing in this episode, does it? If Smilo could do that, he'd not have needed to fight even. Is this some vague attempt to explain why all the Jedi Knights have been so stupid while battling him? But if that's the sort of thing Smilo could do, why does it never ever happen to any of the named characters? He didn't get into Squid Game's head, he won't get into Jackie's head. VPN told us he gets in everyone's head, but he had to tell us that because there was no evidence that he'd done any such thing. That seems like the sort of mechanic you really need to establish and properly ground in order for the show not to collapse under the weight of 1,000 questions again. In fact, we're only ever going to see Smilo do anything of this sort once in the remainder of the episode, and he just does it to troll Fanny May for no fucking reason at all. It's quite funny, actually.
Coward! You are going to betray me.
What are we achieving with this line? Could it possibly be that the show wants to begin tying Smilo to the Witches of Brendok because it realizes it's done absolutely nothing with that yet, and it's only got 3 episodes left? Could it be that because the Acolyte has affirmative action to the disabled into its writers' rooms, they couldn't think of any better way to begin creating the link? I'll point out too that Occupational Safety and Health Administration has already forgotten that she was worried about Jackie. She and VPN are more concerned with finding Basil again, so they carry on running away. Again, all this is mainly done to contrive a way of keeping important characters out of scenes until it is their allotted time to die. But it might have been better had the preceding fight between Squid Game and Smilo Ren instead been between VPN and Smilo. Smilo kills the rest of the Jedi, leaving just the named characters alive, and the survivors are rattled. They try to retreat. They try to get Occupational Safety and Health Administration to safety. VPN steps up, tells Squid Game to get Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Jackie back to the ship. Off they go, while VPN gets his face off with Smilo, who's really just toying with him. We could keep the same beats about Squid Game's dark past if we have to, but thrown at Yord instead to destabilize him, to sow the seeds of doubt. Smilo could play with Yord for a bit, then dispatch him with relative ease. Meanwhile, Fanny May could intercept Squid Game and co and try to surrender to them, which would slow them down. Then, when they all begin running back to the ship, Smilo's red lightsaber ignites in front of them, bringing us to the battle's climax. Besides giving VPN a more noble death than the one he'll actually get, this version has the added bonus of not having us waste time finding ways to reposition characters out of the way in order that the next scene play out as the writers wish it. Enough already with the convenient disappearances and the quantum leaps and the conveniently prolonged absences, god damn it, and enough with Smilo getting the upper hand only to leave protagonists alive. Let your characters' decisions dictate their positions. Stop having their required positions dictate their decisions. decisions. Jackie and Fanny May are still fighting, and Jackie is still not using her lightsaber for some fucking reason. She finally gets the cuffs on Fanny, whereupon she spots that Fanny had stolen Kilnaka's lightsaber, which she too inexplicably refused to use at any point during their fight. Strange noises ensue, and then suddenly Smilo! Goodo. So he left VPN alive in order to chase Occupational Safety and Health Administration, then he left Occupational Safety and Health Administration alive to fight Squid Game, then he left Squid Game alive to go after Jackie and Fanny May, and he's found them so quickly we assume he must have sensed their presence. But if he'd sensed their presence, and if getting to Fanny May had always been his priority, then why did he run after Occupational Safety and Health Administration when Fanny was staring gormlessly at him through a window the whole fucking time?
May, you can learn from this Padawan. She's a loyal pupil.
You could also learn from this Padawan because, despite only being a Padawan, she's about to put up a better fight than multiple Jedi Knights combined. This extended scene is another example of the best choreography ever, I guess. Except no, not really, no. Don't get me wrong, some of the moves are impressive. I don't know if Daphne Keane did the whole fight herself. The amount of time we spend with her back to camera makes me suspect she did not. But there are some nice moves here and there, it's got a good flow to it. But here's the thing. If your understanding of choreography is limited merely to, it's fast and it's flashy so it's amazing, then you have a deracinated understanding of choreography. There's this very irritating tendency amongst fans of multiple modern movies and franchises known for their special effects extravaganzas to advertise with pride how little they actually think about what they are seeing. It looks cool, so you, the critic, are mad and wrong if you even try to subject it to scrutiny. This is fucking annoying, because advertising your own low standards is no way to improve the standards of the products you consume. No seriously great work of art is produced by somebody whose attitude is, lol, it's cool, bro, stop overthinking it. I did both my undergraduate and my master's dissertations in aesthetics, so this complaint is partly just me taking vengeance on other people for my own decisions. But there is no classical definition of art that is not married to a conception of art's purpose, and every component part of a great work has something to say. Choreography is not just spins and flicks, any more than ballet is just dancing. It is why those spins and flicks, what the movements tell us about the story and the characters involved in it. Nick Gillard, the choreographer behind the prequels, has plenty to say on the why of the fights he created. They each tell a story and are, again, led by the characters involved in them. You can always tell a Disney Star Wars fan by the way they defend a spin in a Disney Star Wars production with snooty references to spins in one of the prequel movies. Not ultimately because they are defending the Disney thing, but because they evince no understanding of the comparator. These people are, as I've said before, homo without the sapiens. They are the lowest of the lowest common denominator, whose reflex when defending the thing they are told it is fashionable to like is to denigrate the movies that made the franchise they have carpetbagged their way into like some lousy beggar. Because they don't understand the criticism of the thing they are defending, because they don't actually engage with product on any kind of artistic level, they fall back on surface level denigrations of better things from times yore. I am one of those people who will complain that the Anakin v Obi-Wan fight in Revenge of the Sith is too long and lapses into absurdity, but the choreography there is always intentional. It does tell a story. Per Gillard himself, these are two men who know each other's every move, who are so alike in so many ways, whose best moves can only match the best moves of the other, which so often gives the impression that they are fighting a mirror. Anakin v Dooku, also in Revenge of the Sith, is almost a parody of their fight in Clones in order to show the switch in power dynamics for which Palpatine is prepared to junk his old and aging apprentice for the one approaching the peak of his powers. In the original trilogy, which is arguably clearer for its lack of precise choreography, form is discarded entirely when Luke gives in to his anger in Return of the Jedi, and Vader, whose technical proficiency and strength made this fight so one-sided in Empire, can't stand against it, because anger really is power, and while he is conflicted, Luke in this moment is not. These fights all mean something because of the story they are telling, and the choreography is always geared toward a purpose. The fact the Acolyte has people fighting one at a time for no reason, Jedi waving at nothing to make the scenes look busier than they are, completely inconsistent power sets, characters being contrived out of scenes they should logically be present in, and people not using weapons where they really should be, already defeats the argument that this is the best choreography ever. because on a purely mechanical level, huge contrivances are required to support the fighting styles deployed. But on a deeper and more important level, the fights being untethered from character and motive also undermines the Acolyte's claim to quality. Here, for example, we have Jackie, a Padawan who couldn't be trusted to train with a lightsaber in the last episode, dual-wielding lightsabers with implausible skill and putting up a much better fight than all the Jedi Knights from earlier combined. Her movements and her skills don't proceed from anything we know about her character, and in fact conflict with what little information we do have about her character. Meanwhile, though we don't yet know Smilo's full intentions, we've already seen him not strike a killing blow twice in order to prolong the episode, and on both occasions his superseding motive has been different. We're about to see him go out of his way trying to kill Fanny May before taking out the Jedi, which would suggest that killing her is his primary motive, except that it wasn't just a few minutes ago, and it won't be in a few minutes' time, meaning that choreography isn't tethered to anything except a loose interpretation of the rule of cool. With perhaps two exceptions, we learn nothing about Smilo from his actions, save that he is quick, strong, and apparently schizophrenic. Yord does tell us that Smilo doesn't obey the rules of combat, and as is usually the case with the Acolyte, he tells us that because the writers have done a pretty bad job of showing it thus far. But as an idea, it's not terrible. Jedi who've become too comfortable, too formulaic, too abstracted from the real and violent world by the centuries of flourishing and peace that Episode 1 told us prevails in this time period. Though the High Republic comics would beg to differ. If their only practice is training programs and rote forms, they would be surprised by a skilled duelist who doesn't abide by those same rules. Though it would then pose the question, who trained Smilo? How did Smilo get so good, while the actual police force, who the show has already portrayed being sent out on all manner of missions, seemingly has no actual real-world experience of combat? Answers to that question may be forthcoming in later episodes, but for now, there are really only two instances where the episode does succeed in showing rather than telling us of Smilo's departure from the norms of war. He surprises Jackie with a second blade, and he snaps Yord's neck. I'll have some criticisms of both instances when we get there, but for the purposes of this little section, these two moments are good because they are the only moments where the choreography tells us a story. The rest is just busy work. On the fight goes, and with every additional second it adds to the posthumous embarrassment of the dumb Jedi Knights earlier, while also returning us to the question, where is this mindfuckery Smilo is supposed to be capable of, and why isn't he using it? Also, what happened to that gash on Jackie's leg that caused her to scream earlier? Seems she's recovered already. Also, you keep finding openings for kicks, and later you'll find openings for smashing Smilo several times in the head with the hilt of your lightsaber, but I'm pretty sure one of those is an opening for something a bit more lethal, isn't it? And each one of these underhand maneuvers diminishes the force of Yord VPN telling us that Smilo doesn't follow the rules of combat. Because what rules is he not following if you're allowed to smash him in the face repeatedly? For now, Smilo is intent on fighting off Jackie rather than going after Fanny May, who is still lying on the floor with her hands cuffed. She eventually gets up and toddles off through the woods, which is Smilo's cue to pull yet another Batman maneuver. I can't help but think that if Jackie was so distracted that she didn't see you run off, Smilo, that was an opening you could have exploited to kill her before you ran off, Smilo. But I guess it's not her time to die yet, so never mind. Yord VPN and Occupational Safety and Health Administration, meanwhile, are still running through the woods, and Yord VPN still has his lightsaber out. This is the bit where we get to pay off the buggery from the last episode.
Yord, turn off your saber. Do it. The light attracts them.
We go slowly.
So light attracts them, meaning we have to turn off lightsabers. Somebody should really have told all those Jedi earlier who were waving their lightsabers around for a while. I guess the bugs didn't spot the very bright lights emanating from the battle because we're just not ready for them yet, not ready for the buggery. But don't you worry, we're getting close now. It's almost time for serious buggery. Just you wait, it's great, you'll enjoy it. I know my audience, I know you well. Buggery is very much your thing, you dirty fucks. Fanny May is still running away, but Smilo catches up with her. She's important enough to him to break off yet another fight he should have won, but for what reason? Is he here to kill her? Well, that's what we were told he was going to do in the last episode.
He'll kill you.
Master, I was weak.
You've always been weak.
Oh, I mean, I guess he's not here to kill her then, because, you know, why would you cut her cuffs off first if you were just going to kill her? Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, no. Never mind then. Never mind. No, it's just dumb again. Good job. Seriously though, why even bother with the cuffs? What do we achieve with the cuffs? Why go to all the trouble of having Jackie cuff Fanny if her cuffing Fanny makes absolutely no difference? Except insofar as we have to make the villain do a dumb thing to get them off again so Fanny can use her hands later. Why not just have Smilo interrupt their fight before Jackie can cuff her? And why are you taking such a fucking long time to kill her? Quite apart from these stupid cuffs thing, you do remember that you've left all the important Jedi alive, right? You do realize they could be right on your tail? Oh, speaking of, suddenly Squid Game. Once again, fuck knows where he's been this whole time. I guess he was just kept on pause in order to facilitate the best choreography in the old fuck off. And suddenly Jackie. I guess this one's a bit more forgivable since Smilo only pointlessly ran away from her a couple of minutes ago, but it's still wonderful how characters can just jump in from off the soundstage at a moment's notice. Really adds to my immersion, you know? More fighting ensues. Jackie's game plan appears to be to toddle around, occasionally kicking Smilo in the shins. I guess she's trying to annoy him to death. Jackie, if you've got an opening like that, try using that laser sword thing you're holding there. Oh, for fuck's sake, she kicked him again. She kicked him in the chest that time. If he's that open, you've really got no excuse for not stabbing him, Jackie. You're not going to get much sympathy from me when you die, because you'd not have had to die if you'd not insisted on kicking the smiley fucker. Fanny May briefly has an opening herself, but she opts not to try and assist the Jedi she was going to surrender to in the previous episode, because that's not her character at the moment. She runs off and Smilo once again breaks off the fight to chase her down, so for the moment at least he's back to wanting her dead at all costs. He very briefly remembers that he can use the Force to pull people around, which he forgot to do earlier to Fanny May and which he forgot to do even earlier to Occupational Safety and Health Administration, because if he'd remembered we'd not be here now. But he yet again pauses before the killing blow just long enough for Jackie to perform a saving throw.
What?
We have to go back.
Please, don't.
Why? Why do you have to go back now? You didn't have to go back when you said it the first time. You didn't have to go back when you heard Jackie screaming. Why do you have to go back now? Because you heard your sister's disembodied voice? Hey, remember when, at the beginning of the last episode, you were about to leave Coruscant without saying goodbye because you couldn't be bothered to deal with your sister?
I came to say goodbye. I've done what I needed to do.
I figured you'd stay until we apprehended her. I mean, you must be curious after all this time.
May is the Jedi's problem now.
It's going to be pretty fucking awkward if we get to the end of this episode and you decide that you still don't want to be with your sister because it means this beat is bookended by you doing the exact opposite of the thing you're about to do. It's that kind of character consistency we've come to love and expect from the Acolyte. Keeps you on the edge of your seat when any given character can do any given thing at any given moment because they don't actually have motives. Such suspense, much intrigue, much sustrigue and inspense is going on here.
He's gonna kill them. He's gonna kill them all.
He was always going to kill them, you fucking minge mop. This is literally what he's been doing the whole time you've been here. You've already seen him killing everyone. Oh, and hey, remember when YordVPN said he was prepared to subdue her if she disobeyed orders? Sure would be nice if she'd made some kind of appeal to his character, to his attachments, said something to change his mind and convince him to try and play the hero, but he'd have to have a character for that to work, and he doesn't have one of those, so no. She just flicks on a flashlight to attract the bugs and runs back the way they came with Yord on her heels. Intense buggery follows with him. During all this time, the fight between Smilo, Jackie, and Squid Game continues, with Fanny May still just skirting around the edge doing nothing of note, which is itself worthy of note, because she should either be helping or running away, and given Smilo is dead set on killing her over and above killing the Jedi, or, was 2 minutes ago, she should already be dead. Smilo then remembers that he's wearing a cortosis helmet that's really handy, and he headbutts Squid Game's lightsaber out of commission. Because none of this has been set up, we have no reason to suppose that this power is in any way limited, so the fact he doesn't keep trying to short out their lightsabers with his head or his magic wristband seems contrived as hell. If you led with that, you'd already have won, you chuckle. Somehow, Squid Game has more luck without his lightsaber than he does with it, and he kung fu's Smilo off a ledge. Jackie then jumps down after him, but having just demonstrated himself highly skilled without a weapon, and despite him being a Jedi Master strong in the Force, and despite Jackie being a Padawan he is presumably sworn to protect, Squid Game decides to just stand back and let her go at Smilo on her own. It is really very silly to show him taking on Smilo hand to hand, mere seconds before you show him standing back waiting for his lightsaber to come back to life. Because once again, it begs questions that needn't have been asked. Like, why are you just standing around like a lemon waiting for your Padawan to get killed? Why couldn't we have shown Smilo getting the upper hand on Squid Game, shorting out his lightsaber, and have Jackie be the one to jump into the rescue, knocking Smilo back? This is one of the many reasons having the Jedi specialize in, essentially, MMA, showing them perfectly willing to take on armed opponents without a weapon of their own is unwise. You remove a tool that you could exploit in a battle. Until recently, a Jedi losing his lightsaber would be unambiguously a reason to worry about him, a clear sign that he's losing, is in trouble, is in great peril, is maybe even in need of rescue. It's not that they can do nothing without them, it's that they are severely hampered without them.
Next time, try not to lose it. Yes, Master. This weapon is your life.
The more competent you make them without their lightsabers, the less imperiled they seem when they lose their lightsabers. So the more suspicious it is when Squid Game here holds back rather than trying to assist Jackie, whether with fists or with the Force. And she's his Padawan, for fuck's sake, he's got a duty of care. Jackie briefly gets the upper hand and manages to pummel Smilo's helmet off his head. Hey Jackie, if you've got time to do that, Jackie, why don't you just fucking stab him? Stab him in the face. Do it, Jackie. Stab him in the face. Stab him in the face, Jackie. Stab him in the fucking head. Do it, Jackie. Do it. And off the helmet flies, but oh no, Smilo's had a second hidden saber this whole time.
It's always an honor to get to witness anything or anyone transform into the Force. Although you've had more experience with death than I have.
Not anymore, lol. Rip Jackie. Don't worry though, Jackie, it's always an honor to watch anyone or anything get transformed into the Force, isn't it, Jackie? Ah, Jackie, we hardly knew you. And I mean that quite sincerely, we hardly knew you. Genuine props to the show for having the guts to kill her off, I suppose. And no, unlike Sabine, she is almost certainly not coming back from this one. TK Keachel has since unlocked her Twitter account and seemed to confirm Jackie is definitely dead. We can criticize the inconsistency, as I did in my first review on this show, when Trinity got offed by that small knife, but that criticism rebounds upon shows that make stab wounds non-lethal. The Acolyte is doing something right here. It's everyone else that's wrong. The mechanical criticism is, of course, that Squid Game is just standing around watching this all happen, which makes him look quite bad. And the more substantive criticism is precisely that we barely know Jackie. She's not really much of a character, despite all the various bits and bobs of potential I've been trying to highlight across these videos. Far too little of it was ever actualized. So there's a rudimentary shock value at her death and a very abstract kind of sadness because we understand she is supposed to be a character, but the effect is superficial because there is so little depth to it. It's a shame too, because had anybody at any point thought to spend time turning these people into characters, then there are some good ingredients here. Jackie's relationship with Occupational Safety and Health Administration was good in theory, but never really actualized. Smilo Ren can be imposing. His willingness to kill what is essentially a child, and quite brutally, would elevate him as a villain if he was really a person, but as yet he isn't. I don't want to pretend there's nothing of worth in this scene, or some of the ideas behind it, but it's a really good example, the example par excellence, of the importance of setup. It's not enough to have one good idea isolated from everything around it. You need many good ideas, and all of them need to be connected, and they need to stem from the small, unflashy business of character writing. Over in the woods, Occupational Safety and Health Administration stops, having seemingly sensed this death, which would mean more if they actually actually had a meaningful relationship rather than the one we've had to headcanon into existence because the writers couldn't be bothered, and which causes a bit of a problem since this ex-Jedi, quite weak in the Force, is seemingly more attuned to the deaths of Jedi than actual Jedi are, even though keeping the Jedi as a whole unaware of these events is pretty vital to the integrity of the prequel films at this point. This, anyway, is the first time Squid Game sees Smilo's face, and my goodness, I bet he feels silly. My Padawan is dead because I arrested this guy for murder and let him off with a caution. Oh, what a fool I've been.
Was that its name?
She was a child.
You brought her here.
That is a fair point. It's not going to mean much unless we give Squid Game a chance to reflect on it later, and that's not going to happen in this episode, but his guilt should absolutely be a big part of episode 6.
You really didn't know it was me. Not even deep down? You attacked me while my back is turned? Not very Jedi of you.
Okay, dick move with the cloak, that's a bit silly. I'm also slightly unsure of the leverage here, and the motives as well. Smilo's been trying to kill Fanny May for quite some time. Fanny May is not Squid Game's top priority. Smilo hasn't previously thought to use her as leverage, even though earlier in the battle it might actually have worked better. So why is he now taking her hostage? What is his goal here? The meta goal, obviously, the writer's goal, is that this affords us time for talking and exposition, but I'm not sure it accords at all with whatever passes for Smilo's motives. Though I suppose throwing out jibes like "not very Jedi of you" is a clever enough way of exploiting Squid Game's weakness, which is really the Jedi weakness: honor, rules, decorum. So that's another serviceable idea that's just not really being supported by everything around it.
What are you?
I have no name, but a Jedi like you might call me Sith.
Oh no, he said the S word. Oh fuck, he's gone and done it now. Oh gee, oh dear. There is still some talk on the internet about whether Smilo really is a Sith. The line, "a Jedi like you might call me Sith," is not quite the same as saying, "I am absolutely 100% definitely a Sith. I am Sithing it all up in this house. Oh boy, am I such a Sith." Some enterprising people have even suggested they heard a trace of Kylo Ren's theme in this episode. And yes, it does seem that they are right.
What extraordinary beings we are.
So they are now positing that Smilo might be a Ren, whatever the fuck a Ren is. Wikipedia, though, still says that the Knights of Ren, whatever the fuck they are, were founded in 3 ABY, but, you know, what are dates even worth anymore? Dates are such a dated paradigm. But it doesn't really matter what Smilo thinks he is. If he says the Jedi would think he is a Sith, and if nothing happens between now and the end of the show to disabuse them of this notion, then either Ki-Adi-Mundi is lying in The Phantom Menace, which would be fucked, or he never learns about anything that happened here, which would be dumb, or The Phantom Menace is just broken.
Why risk discovery?
Well, I did wear a mask.
Really? We're doing jokes? We're doing jokes here? This is the tone you want to go for? Now, it is a fair question, Smilo. Of all the things you could be doing with a whole galaxy in which to do them, popping up to slaughter a bunch of incompetent Jedi is a bit of a risk, isn't it? You are more at risk of discovery here, even wearing a mask, than you would be masturbating in some seedy bar on Nal Hutta.
What do you want?
Freedom. The freedom to wield my power the way I like, without having to answer to Jedi like you. I want a pupil, an acolyte.
Oh, he said it. He said the thing. I love it when they say the name of the show in the thing. It's great. But Smilo, I do return you to the point above. You have a whole galaxy in which to do pretty much whatever the hell you like. There's the whole Outer Rim, in which the Republic and the Jedi barely operate even by the time of the prequels. There are planets outside the Republic. There are planets the Republic doesn't even know about. And there's plenty of Force-sensitive kiddos around you could kidnap and turn into your acolytes. Going into Republic public space specifically looking for Jedi to kill kinda suggests you don't just want freedom, my dude.
But this one went back on our deal. She exposed me.
But Smilo, that is not what happened. Everybody knows that's not what happened. She didn't know who you were. We clearly established this several times. Going back on your deal, whatever the hell that deal was, didn't expose you. To borrow a line, you've done that yourself. Anyway, if your goal is now to kill Fanny May and kill every single last Jedi on Kofar, and there's only 2 left, then why are we still here? Why are we even having this conversation? Why have you taken her hostage? Seems like you're dragging this out for the sake of exposition in a way that makes it more likely somebody escapes knowing who you are.
I don't make the rules. The Jedi do.
So why are they still alive, Smilo? Why are they still living? Also, I totally called this, by the way. I've been saying for ages that the Acolyte will try and mount a critique of the Jedi along exactly these lines. Listen, here is me totally calling it ages ago. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we didn't come away no, that's a clunky way of putting it. I would be surprised actually if we did come away from season 1 having re-established the Jedi as being good. I don't think we will do that. I think we will get the criticism of them. I think Disney's actually quite interested in doing that. I mean, the characters it chooses to focus on are all characters who leverage implicit criticisms of the Jedi, like Ahsoka Tano, for example. They're very much hammering in on the incompetence of the Jedi as established in the prequels, which already sort of does away with the idea that the Jedi, as an organization at least, are good. And I can very easily see them doing something like, well, Smilo Ren will tell Osha what really happened back on Brendok, and actually it's the Jedi's fault for trying to impose their rigid system of morality on people who have simply alternative points of view. So it's the Jedi trying to be good that creates the bad people against whom they fight. I can see that being the sort of direction we go down, which will diminish the Jedi's moral force and authority forever, but I think they would be happy to do that. Anyway, suddenly YordVPN uses the Force to pull Smilo's helmet to himself, then he swings at Smilo, but hits his cortosis bangle, and then he dies. Again, pretty badass move from Smilo there, I don't mind that at all. Just a shame YordVPN is barely a character and doesn't have a relationship either with the audience or with anybody else in the show. Squid Game doesn't even say no. And Occupational Safety and Health Administration, who was following just behind YordVPN, says absolutely nothing. So, rip Yord? He's just dead now. That's kind of it. Bye. I reiterate, this show told us that Occupational Safety and Health Administration and YordVPN were Padawans together at the Jedi Temple. It told us this in episode 1. It began with YordVPN believing that Occupational Safety and Health Administration murdered Trinity. Then it gave us a beat where he exonerates her, even though that was a hat on a hat because we'd already had one of those. But that beat should have re-established trust between them. It's just that the show doesn't seem to have regarded either as a character beat because neither led anywhere. They didn't rediscover a friendship, they didn't come closer together. YordVPN has been a standoffish jerk from his first scene to his last. He was being a bitch about the stun gun as recently as the last episode. If you really want us to care about these deaths, show, you need to show us why they matter. Killing off named characters because you think it's dramatic is, and I keep having to use this word, superficial. It's like the writers looked at Game of Thrones and concluded that the fact of killing a named character is what makes a scene interesting, rather than who that named character is and what they represent, which funnily enough is the mistake Game of Thrones itself made in its bad later seasons, which is why everybody holds Ned Stark's death and the Red Wedding in such high esteem, and nobody likes the deaths of Varys, Littlefinger, Sajora, or Little Miss Sunday. Because nobody in the Acolyte cares about YordVPN, Fanny May uses his death as a distraction to toddle off through the woods again, and Occupational Safety and Health Administration blandly and boringly pulls the stun gun and shoots her. Hey, remember in the last episode, one of the last conversations Occupational Safety and Health Administration had with YordVPN concerned this precise moment?
You must have reason to suspect May will listen to what you have to say.
But if it comes to it, and she doesn't listen to me, you need to stop her. I won't be able to do it.
Yep, guess that went absolutely nowhere. Fantastic. Squid Game decides that now is the time to be very angry. But rather than using the Force to grab his lightsaber from the ground, because if he did that he would win, he decides that Kung Fu is absolutely the best technique to use here. Only after he kicks Smilo over does he think to grab his saber, but when he goes to chop Smilo's head off, which he should already have done, Occupational Safety and Health Administration stops him. No, Squid Game, he has control of the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be left alive. Seriously though, why? Why is he not dead? He's just called himself a Sith, or at the very least said that's what you would call him. That's as good as confessing to be the greatest enemy of the Jedi. He has just butchered close to a dozen Jedi Knights. He has just murdered your Padawan. He's told you he will kill every single person who has seen his face. He has absolutely no connection to Occupational Safety and Health Administration, so I don't know why she's the one trying to spare him. Wouldn't you at the very least want to cuff the guy? If you're gonna let him live for whatever reason? And why would you want to let him live even?
This is your master. You trust him? Even after everything he did to you.
His mind is twisted by darkness.
I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours?
As if anything, this is yet another motive Squid Game has for killing the fucker. Not only is he a Sith, or at least Sith adjacent, not only has he just killed nearly a dozen Jedi, not only has he promised to kill everyone who is still alive, not only has he told you he's accepted his darkness, not only has he just murdered your Padawan in cold blood, but he's also one of only 2 people who could bust open the conspiracy of silence that you, Squid Game, have been upholding for the last 16 years. Not killing him suggests you are really not as dark as Smilo thinks you are, but if you're not going to kill him because it's not the Jedi way, then whatever you do, don't just let him go. Cuff the fucker. Knock him out. Drag him back to your ship unconscious. Cut his fucking hands off. Do something. Do anything. Just don't do nothing.
The Jedi do not attack the unarmed.
But you do. Fanny May told us you do. This conspiracy of yours exists for a reason. And Smilo just snapped Yord's neck with his bare hands. He's a fucking combatant, you prick. Oh look, he's got his lightsaber back. He's armed again. Because of course he is.
I love you,
Oh, what the fuck? So you won't kill him yourself, but you'll let him get buggered to death? That's even worse. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Why the fuck would Occupational Safety and Health Administration stop Squid Game from killing Smilo, because that would be wrong, only to stick a torch on his back in the hopes he gets viciously buggered to death instead? Also, I can't help but notice that when Yord VPN attacked Smilo from behind, Smilo detected him and blocked his lightsaber. But when Occupational Safety and Health Administration runs into even closer range and sticks Pip on his back, he doesn't detect her in time to stop her. Also, how does a guy we've just seen doing this become a guy who can't scratch his own back? I thought we were supposed to fear Smilo. If the episode's done anything right, it's showing how ruthless and proficient he is. Watching him flail around trying to get a torch off his back while a bunch of murder moths try and bugger him to Kingdom Come is just silly. How are moths more dangerous than Jedi in this show? But anyway, he gets carried away for some mid-air buggery. He's joined the Mile High Club.
Why did he say I shouldn't trust you? What did you do?
I'll explain.
Oh, fuck off, show. Just fuck off. What possible reason would Occupational Safety and Health Administration have to take anything Smilo says seriously? Squid Game has already used the I'll explain line. He used it in the last episode.
May safely to the ship. I'll explain everything.
This is your first moment post-battle, and 2 people you are supposed to be very close to are lying dead at your feet, and this is the first thing you think to ask?
What have you done? I did what I needed to do. For you. For our family. Everything you have ever done has been for yourself. All of these lives lost tonight. Again, all because of you. The Jedi got what they deserved. Those Jedi were more my family than you ever were. Have you forgotten who we are? Where we come from? They invaded our home, It faded. Hey, no. You're the violent one. You started that fire. And I would have been dead too if it weren't for the Jedi. They've brainwashed you.
Oh, it's all so fucking empty. First meeting after 16 years in which you each assumed the other was dead, and the first thing you do is dispassionately rekindle, that's a pun, the argument about who tried to set fire to who back in episode 3. I could see Occupational Safety and Health Administration being angry, distraught, disbelieving, interrogating Fanny May about what her motives are, why she's killed so many people, what could possibly have led her to this. But, oh, you're so selfish, is such a bland line to throw out in what is supposed to be a moment of high drama.
They've brainwashed you. They've turned you against me.
You turned her against me!
Oh no. And anyway, what is this appeal even appealing to? Why would Fanny May even suspect Occupational Safety and Health Administration to be moved by it? You just said you think she has been turned against you by brainwashing. Returning her to her true self isn't an appealing offer if she has no conception of a true self that is missing. This might be why the show forced in that distrust beat a minute or so ago, but it's far too perfunctory to make this scene tense or believable. We've not got Occupational Safety and Health Administration to a tipping point. We have not sufficiently undermined her faith in the Jedi. We have barely done anything to get her anywhere close to that point. It's something I argued we should start way back in episode 2 in Occupational Safety and Health Administration's first conversation with Squid Game on the ship. This was the moment to start sowing the seeds of doubt. You told me my sister was dead, but she was alive the whole time? What else were you lying to me about, you sneaky fuck? It is astounding that we have come to the end of episode 5 of an 8-episode show with our protagonist still being this fucking empty. We can fault Amanda Stenberg too, of course. Her acting range barely covers half a person, never mind the two she is supposed to be playing. I guess we should probably be thankful that her dad is a rich and connected white man, otherwise twerking for attention on street corners would be her profession instead of her hobby. But she is principally being let down by the writers in this show who have not given her a character to play.
I love you. Don't choose them again.
Uh-huh.
You're a criminal, May. You must pay for your crimes.
Fuck me in the acting. Jesus Christ.
What are you doing? What I came here to do. Arrest you. Don't do this.
But you didn't. That is not what you did. Why do you keep pretending like whatever contradictory nonsense has just happened in the script was all part of your plan? You're not Thrawn, darling. You can't hand-wave away incompetence like that fat fucking smurf. At the beginning of episode 4, you said you were leaving because you had already done what you came to do, and Fanny May was somebody else's problem, even though you'd accomplished absolutely nothing, and at no point did you have any agency in ending up on Coruscant, as we covered in the last video. You were stopped from leaving because Squid Game wanted to use you as bait, which you agreed to, even though you just got done telling us how it wasn't your problem. Then you arrived on Kofar and you told YordVPN that he would probably have to do the whole arresting thing because you couldn't really be bothered. And now you are telling us that having been out of control since pretty much your first scene in episode 1, you really meant to come here and arrest Fanny all along? No, you fucking didn't. Stop lying. You lie. Stop lying to us. Stop it now.
You did this to yourself.
You have done that yourself.
You followed a false master.
So did you.
He stole you from us. He saved my life.
And what kind of life is that, huh? A life without purpose? Without love? Without family? He led you nowhere.
You don't know any of this. You have literally no idea what Occupational Safety and Health Administration has been up to these last 16 years. Again? She's unconscious again? My old Nan has survived bigger falls than this, and she is in her 80s. L'Oreal, it's just not worth it. Is it time? Yeah, I think it's time. Fanny May is now going to abandon her sister and trick Squid Game into thinking that she is Occupational Safety and Health Administration. 10th iteration. Having betrayed Smilo Ren, fought against the arrest she was planning on, and been cuffed by the Jedi, she breaks free of her cuffs and decides to run away. 11th iteration. Having decided to resist arrest and then tried to run away, she sticks around to attack the Jedi she was going to surrender to, because Occupational Safety and Health Administration is the most important thing to her now, even though she tried to burn her alive in the 2nd iteration. But she doesn't kill Squid Game after stunning him, even though assassinating the 4 Jedi Masters, including Squid Game, was her primary motivation from iterations 3 through 7, which accounts for most of the show. 12th iteration. Her sister is the most important thing in the world to her. She will sacrifice every other motive to bring Occupational Safety and Health Administration back into the family. 13th iteration. Her sister isn't the most important thing in the world to her because she knocks her out and steals her identity because she wants to sneak away with Squid Game for some reason. 14th iteration speculative. She wants to be taken back to Coruscant because getting rid of the Jedi is the most important thing in the world to her, ? I'm sure I don't need to tell any aspiring writer watching this video that having 14 independent and self-contradicting motives for one character across just 5 episodes is a bad thing, so I won't. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Smilo has seemingly been getting buggered all night, but now the sun's coming up, he finally beats the murder moths and gets Pip off his back. Basil picks up Pip Clip. What the fuck are you doing here, Basil? Weren't you heading back to the ship? Why did you pop up here now to pick up Pip? Why would you be running towards Smilo and the murder moths, Basil? Do you want to get buggered as well? Or are you just the writer's convenience beaver now? Conveniently beavering around to set things up for episode 6? Yeah, I think that's exactly what you are, you convenient beaver.
Are you all right?
Where is she?
Who?
Your sister.
She's gone. We must get to the ship.
This cannot work. Fanny May has a big old lesbian witch tattoo on her forehead. She just trimmed her noodles with a lightsaber that is going to singe. It is going to smell of burnt hair. She's also stronger in the Force than Occupational Safety and Health Administration is. She's closer to the dark side. She's a different fucking person. Why would Squid Game just accept she's gone as an explanation and trudge back to the ship? Wouldn't you still want to try and find her? What about Smilo? Smilo is still around. He's still pretty fucking close by even, and he doesn't have his Magneto helmet on. Surely you can sense him? Surely you can sense that Fanny May isn't Occupational Safety and Health Administration? Surely you have fucking eyes and a fucking nose, and you could see the very clear evidence that she isn't her? You know what though? You know what I think they're saving themselves for? Well, we find out in episode 2 that Occupational Safety and Health Administration has that tattoo on her arm that she got on a booze cruise with some work friends. Master Squid Game will spot that the tattoo is missing, and that will clue him in. He just won't notice the singed hair or the much more obvious silver tattoo on her fucking head beforehand. Because if that was the kind of thing he was likely to notice, he'd have noticed it already. Oh, it's so fucking dumb. Squid Game gives a cursory look to the corpses of Jackie and NordVPN. Shucks, isn't it sad? Let's go. And they trudge all the way back to the ship. I can't help but note that they needed a tracker to get into the forest, and they don't have their tracker anymore, so fuck knows how they found their way out so easily. And apparently, along all this very long trek, they haven't shared so much as a word about what just happened, because if they'd done that, Squid Game would probably have spotted the ruse by now. I can't wait to see how vague and abstract their conversations will be in the next episode to keep this pretense alive. I also can't wait to see how they're going to handle the Sith business. If I had to guess, I'd say Squid Game will Skype Greenbean and say, "This evil guy attacked us and said he was a Sith." And she'll say something like, "If word of this gets out, there'll be a panic and our political enemies will be emboldened, so we mustn't tell the council anything about it." And somehow everyone will just proceed as though this is tenable. The council won't think it worth investigating why a dozen Jedi went out on a mission and died, and everybody will persist in a state of cheerful off-screen ignorance. Or it could be worse than that. I don't know. Basil the convenience beaver has conveniently followed them back to the ship and conveniently boarded the ship, and conveniently nobody has noticed him yet. And he's conveniently sniffing the air, so he is definitely on to Fanny. He can sniff Fanny. But oh no, NordVPN is the only Jedi on the team who could speak Beaver. So conveniently, I bet Basil will make a fuss at some point in the next episode, but Squid Game will ignore him because he doesn't speak Beaver. Back in the woods, Smilo Ren picks up his helmet and comes upon the still unconscious body of Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
What extraordinary beings we are, and the revelation of our triumph. You see the depth of our despair.
Most of that is vacuous nonsense, of course, but the "we are" is significant. He's probably going to turn out to be another experiment by the witches. Such would be my guess, anyway. He knows too much about what happened on Brendok, his animosity toward Master Squid Game is too personal, he is drawing a likeness of kind with Occupational Safety and Health Administration, all of which suggests he is not just a dark side user who stumbled upon Fanny May by accident. He should be connected in some way to the events of 16 years ago. There are also lingering questions such as, who trained him? Where did he get his armor? Where did he get his lightsaber? So I actually wouldn't be that surprised to revive speculation from an earlier video if at least one of the mothers is still involved in all of this behind the scenes. I don't think we've seen the last of them. I will stress though that we have just 3 short episodes left in which to wrap up the present tense story while essentially beginning Smilo's story from scratch, and that was always going to be the problem with picking him to be the villain. It wasn't predictable because the show had competently trailed breadcrumbs, had left little clues, bits of evidence tying Timu Ezra to Brendok. No, it was predictable because it was the worst choice the writers could have made. We now have to build his character basically from scratch, elaborate on his motives, and firmly tie those to Brendok. I have a sneaky feeling this scene might end up being significant later on.
Because we're not the same. Of course we are. No, it feels that way because we're the only children here.
Maybe Smilo will turn out to be a secret third child, one the witches hid away in the attic because they were scared of his power and his darkness. Maybe he's the one really responsible for the fire. Then again, somehow I don't think that's the worst thing the show could do, so it probably won't do it. In any case, that brings us to the end of episode 5. Episode 5 has so many contrived beats, so many inexplicable events, so many baffling character decisions. The episode wants us to be distracted from all these by the flashy lightsabers and the fast-paced action. But while those do succeed in ensuring this was not a boring episode, they should not be allowed to gloss over the glaring flaws in the writing. Hell, this episode's got more holes in it than Jackie does. And while that might be too soon, if I'd waited any longer, it would be too late. Because fucking nobody is going to be talking about this in a couple of weeks' time. With that, goodbye. I will see you for the next one.